When you take a stop and look and see crazy things in this black history, across the ocean and across the seas, now is the time to be free.
Well, hello, and welcome to AfRaKa, a Blak Mestory. Okay. Right now, I come to talk about the African me story, going right back to the beginnings of humanity, really, the human existence on this planet. Okay, back in Africa, and we'll go into some of those details as we go through the programming. Okay, we're going to be looking at how we got from this point. When you look at things like what's happening right now, the Black Lives Matters, the whole thing with George Floyd and all the protests and everything, and how that is a continuation, really. We could like look at as being something that has been going on for the last 4,000 years, if you look historically. But again, we'll be looking at some of those things as we go along, and we'll talk about the different things that come up. Okay, so looking at how we got from this point where we are right now as black people, and from our original great position of peace, love and prosperity. Hopefully I'll be bringing out some of those points again as we go along. Okay, so we're going to be limited by the fact that this me story, this series of bringing this down, will concentrate mainly on the 32 original members of the OAU, the OAU being the Organization of African Unity. That was formed on the 25th of May 1963. Okay, just for your information, in case you don't know, here are the 32 nations that attended that first meeting in 1963, and here they are listed.
Rebel in the morning, rebel in the evening.
Okay, you might have noticed that there were 33 countries listed, but Tanganyika and Zanzibar, they would form a united republic in 1964. Today that country is known as Tanzania. Okay, so just to give you a brief background of the first meeting, there was a man called Chan Diouf, who is a Gambian nationalist, and he delivered a speech at the time when his country was still, at this time his country was still a British colony. Okay, so if we can look at that.
I'm a rebel in the morning, rebel in the evening too. I'm a rebel in the daytime, rebel in the nighttime. I'm a rebel in the morning, in the evening. Rebel, I'm a rebel. rebel in the morning, rebel in the evening.
As you can see, truly solid words of inspiration and strength and unity from Cham Joof. Okay, so just because this me story is focused around the events relating to these 32 countries, there are several countries which were not independent in 1963. Okay, and these countries we don't really get a look at in the research what I've done in relation to this. Okay, hopefully sometime in the future that will be rectified. Okay, but right now just working with what we got. So the countries that were not independent at this time were mainly countries that were in the southern part of the continent. If we look at the map, the OAU map here, you can see that the countries in green, including the country in the far left, that's Morocco, the far top left, in the light green, that's Morocco. All of those countries make up the 33 countries that were the original members of the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. And you can also make out by looking at the map that the rest of the countries in the other colors are mainly concentrated towards the south of the continent. Okay, so before we really get into it, I just want to show you how we're going to break down this thing, break down and get down into the me story of our people. Okay, so if we take a look at the list, and what you'll see is 11 different subtitles. These are our different sections, our different chapters, if you like, where we're going to be breaking down, going through the me story, and right up to the present times. Okay, so if we look at it, you can see on the left hand side, right at the top, under the umbrella thorn, we got pre 300,000 BC. Okay, in that section I'm just going to be basically just talking about the time before human existence on the planet. Okay, and just saying a little bit about that as it relates to Africa, certainly. Okay, you couldn't discount the rest of the planet. Personally, I believe that what happens in Africa is basically what will happen on the rest of the planet, even if it's not at the same time. Okay, so the second chapter is the first African habitants. Okay, and in this section, I just basically just running through the dates recorded, like of the first recorded evidence of human habitation. That is the human, as in humans like me and you. Okay, so we'll be looking into that. The third section is looking at nomadic lifestyles. This is an interesting section that we're going into. I don't want to break into it too early and give away too much too soon, but basically it's looking at how the practices are starting to develop. Okay, let me just put it that way. The fourth section is called Dedication Beyond. And basically we're looking at what happens with the Sahara, what happens when the Sahara Desert becomes to dry up, and people begin migrating and certain developments start happening. Okay. Fifth is we call it the first foreign contact. That's where Africans are going outside of the continent, making contacts, trading contacts, whatever, over there. And also you're starting to see people from other continents beginning to appear on the African mainland. Okay. The sixth chapter is called North Africa, first millennium BCE, and that's basically looking at how that region, that part of Africa, begins to effectively get colonialized. Because it gets taken over by foreigners, other people from other continents. Okay. Like I say, I won't give away too much at this stage. Okay. The seventh chapter, we call it Independent Africa, up to the year 1000 in the Common Era. And I was just looking at the activities of the various untouched parts of Africa. So that's mainly the rest of Africa outside of North Africa. Okay. The next section after that, we call it Christianity, first millennium in the Common Era. And again, that's concentrating mainly on North Africa, the sort of colonialized, dominated parts of Africa. At this time, it's under Roman rule, and so we're looking at how that affects activities on the continent up to during the first millennium of the Common Era. Okay, so following on from that, we look at the Arab influence from around the 7th century. You start to see Arabs and the Islamic influence starting to come into the country, in certain parts of the country. Again, concentrated mainly in North Africa, in the formerly colonialized, dominated areas and countries and territories, but also you see the Arabs starting to move further south, further inland, into territories formerly untouched. Okay, and then into the next chapter, we call it the European contact, and basically this looks at when the Europeans, modern Europeans you could say, are starting to get into the continent and making new discoveries, if you call it that, around the coastline of the whole of the continent, really. Yeah, so we have a look at that and the developments that come from that. And then the final chapter, a section, is independence. Basically just looking at the dates when the countries that we talked about, the OAU countries of 1963, when they became independent, and possibly looking at the lead up into that, the events leading into that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm a rebel.
Okay, so we're talking pre 300,000 BCE. Okay, so in this period of time, we talk. Modern science suggests that prior to 300,000 years ago, conditions on Earth were such that it would have been uninhabitable for modern man. It was a time of extreme heat combined with regular megastorms, volcano eruptions, earthquakes, things like that, as the Earth faced a continued severe battering. Okay, archaeological findings have shown evidence of the now extinct hominins, sorry, known as Homo erectus. These were the first humanoids to stand on their hind legs, and they date back to 2 million years ago, right, and spread across the three main continents of the old world. So that's Europe, Africa, Asia. Okay, and also similar to modern man, Homo sapiens, they had variable physical characters which were based on their environmental surroundings. Okay, pretty much down the similar lines of diversity that you find amongst humans today. Okay, and it kind of, in my view, it kind of leaves redundant the notion of this historic out of Africa human migration. Okay, so Homo erectus would have been quite different in appearance externally to modern Homo sapiens. And if we look at the image here, so we have female Homo erectus here, and it's interesting to look at the model image that was created scientifically based on a skull or skeletal findings, which they were able to put together some kind of approximation. Okay, so my own feeling would have been that in accordance with the time period that they were around, that they would have had thicker and more robust skin. If you look at the features of this Homo erectus lady, that would certainly back that up. If you look at the forehead and the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, the shape of the mouth, the gums, and I think there's a short neck there as well. So very sort of strong looking figure and features. Okay, so they were, however, smarter than the average ape, being able to fashion basic tools and control fire and care for their injured and sick, and even make use of various plant lives as medicine. Okay, the limited amount of vegetation at that time period meant that Homo erectus fed virtually exclusively on meat, scavenging what they could and consuming it raw, or often at least partly baked. So catastrophic events of nature would bring rapid climate change around 300,000 years ago, and would lead to the extinction of Homo erectus and making way for the more softer skinned and fragile humanoids such as us, and the earliest evidence of human presence on the planet can be found in Africa, dating back between 300,000 and 200,000 years ago. This was also alongside the Neanderthals, who also appeared on the planet around the same time and were based in the Near East and Eurasia. Just finally, before we break up this section on pre-300,000 BCE, just to say that a lot of the theories that are going around with in relation to evolution, me personally, evolution is not really my thing. I don't. It's still to be explained to me, a lot of aspects, and some of those aspects we will be looking at certainly in the next section. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a rebel.
Yes, the first African inhabitants. The earliest recorded evidence of human habitation on the planet dates back just over 320,000 years, with archaeological findings discovered in Kenya. Other findings at locations in the north, south, east, central and west of the continent reveal evidence of human presence from around 200,000 years ago, and possibly more in some cases. Okay. Contemporary scientific theories seem to agree that significant numbers amongst these early Homo sapiens migrated from their home locations in Africa and began migrating through the narrow northeast passage into the Near East region of Asia. Even if some of the early Africans had wanted to venture into the Near East, the presence in that region of the extraordinarily strong and intelligent Neanderthals were being recorded as being cannibalistic in their practices would have made any such expedition in that direction extremely dangerous, and in practical terms, a foolish one to make. Okay? By the time the Neanderthals were extinct around 40,000 years ago, modern humans from Europe, going up as far as Siberia, had already been recorded as being present. Okay. Coincidentally, human presence in Asia and Europe seems to become more prevalent almost immediately after the disappearance of the Neanderthals. If we look at the table here, you can see a clipping showing the 9 nations. These are the 9 nations where evidence of human presence has been found, stretching back the furthest in our Me story. As you might have noticed by looking at the table, Kenya, South Africa are included amongst our top 9, even though neither were amongst the original 33 that attended the first OAU conference in 1963. If we are to consider the notion of this out of Africa theory that has become so popular these days, it is important for us to also note that the earliest signs of human presence in many other locations within the African continent, even those relatively close to the original sites, as been highlighted on our table. They'd still not registered any sign of human presence, and most wouldn't do so for at least another 20,000 years after the appearance of humans in Europe. Okay. If we look at the second table, this clipping starts from the African countries in our research, where the evidence of Homo sapien presence was found dated at around the same time as the earliest modern humans that were found in Siberia. Okay, so what we need to notice is that several of these countries are actually neighboring countries to our top 9. So for instance, Angola, 39,000 BCE is the earliest estimated date for human habitation, and Angola doesn't border Congo, but its border with the Democratic Republic of Congo is very close to Congo's border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay, so Somalia has a border with Ethiopia. Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso, both of those countries have borders with Mali, and Algeria has a border with Tunisia. Okay, so yet even though they have borders with these countries and are very close or in very close proximity, it is in excess of 150,000 years before humans make it into these territories. Okay, so when we bring this factor into the equation, it would seem that it would be very unlikely that any Africans made it out of Africa in any significant numbers, if at all, during this early period. So this suggests that the earliest Africans lived quietly and peacefully within the boundaries of their Garden of Eden society, playing out their role in harmony with nature and trying to figure out how they fit in as a society of multiple Adams and Eves, only daring to venture out beyond familiar territory very rarely, if at all. So I don't know what your views on the subject might be, but for me it's clear that the so-called out of Africa human migration theory is a non-entity. Just as diversity existed amongst the Homo erectus before us, I can see no reason why it would be imagined that the same wouldn't apply to Homo sapiens, unless there was another agenda behind those kinds of conclusions. As we already know, the 19th century Eurocentric ideas where much of these theories take their root are steeped in a belief that the African black person is little or no different to Homo erectus, defining us as being not quite a fully human being, but more a relic that should be confined to a forgotten history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a rebel.
Nomadic lifestyles. By the time Africans towards the north of the continent had started to follow a nomadic lifestyle around 12,000 years ago, records of human presence on the planet stretch back over 300,000 years. Modern scientific theories suggest that up until this point, Homo sapiens had been living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, a simplified and almost derogatory way of describing how the early Africans were living their lives harmonistic with their natural surroundings. With a rich variety of fruits, nuts, berries, grains, spices, other vegetable food sorts to choose from, the eating of meat would probably have played little or no part in their total diet at that time, although there may have been a significant amount of fishing activity taking place. The land and the water, both providing the people with the food that they needed, were probably the first bodies to be deified by the early Africans, who gave an angelic recognition to the motherly care being provided by nature through these two entities. The development of early cutting tools may have been more for the purpose of fending off dangerous animals that they had the misfortune of stumbling across, rather than for actually hunting down animals for their meat. The scent of burning flesh, of the remains of dead animals previously mauled by other predators such as lions or leopards, may have inspired the occasional eating of meat, particularly in times of drought. The creation of fire for this purpose through the manipulation of the sun's heat rays is an early indication of the deification of the sun and the powers of its unseen and transparent rays. The choking and polluting aspects associated with the smoke from the fires may also have inspired an appreciation of the fresh air, which, like the sun's rays, was also unseen and transparent. Its saintly existence, though real, was in a materially tangible context, uncertain, like that of a father figure. In later times, Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle would refer to these four entities as being the four elements. But despite the two being credited with authorship of this theory in modern times, Dr. George James made the following quote in his 1954 book called Stolen Legacy. So by the time Africans in the north were beginning to enter into their nomadic practices, they had already started to develop a concept of gods, which could be in contemporary terms referred to as being saints, and goddesses, also in the same context, in modern day context, could be referred to as being angels. So out of this, they would develop the concept of gods and goddesses out of different aspects of nature and the wider universe. By doing this, they were able to develop systems of living that would support the safety and security of the various communities of people spread throughout the different parts of the continent. The greatest gift to the Homo sapien from nature was their ability to intelligently adapt, create, and manipulate unfavorable situations to their advantage. Their increased learning in relation to their environment and surroundings would encourage further deification of various entities within nature in accordance with their immediate surroundings, seeing a particularly significant change in human thought and actions in the North African Sahara region around 10,000 BCE. Before we go any further, let us bear in mind that humans had been around on the planet approximately 310,000 years by this time, meaning that for the vast majority of our time on Earth, it has been spent living like this. The Homo sapiens' lack of extrasensory abilities left them vulnerable to various elements within nature that could have a negative impact on their ability to survive. As a result of this, Africans spread across the now Sahara region began living nomadic lifestyles, following cattle from pasture to pasture in accordance with seasonal changes, positions of the stars, and the monthly cycle of the moon, all under the direction of the cattle which they followed and their natural instincts. Deification of the cattle would be developed through this process and would later be identified in the ancient Egyptian culture that would emerge a few millennium later as Apis the bull. Here we can see an image of an Apis, and it's a figure that would contribute to the modern concepts of religion that would be developed over the next few millennia. Remnants of an acknowledgement of this deity can be seen in biblical passages that speak of a heavenly land of milk and honey.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a rebel.
Beyond education. In this section, we're going to be looking at the period of desiccation that occurred in the Sahara region. The first signs of the latest wave of desiccation in the Sahara region started happening perhaps as early as the 8th millennium BCE. Where it definitely really started to take hold between the 5th and the 2nd millenniums BCE, having a severe effect on the nomadic lifestyle systems that were being practiced across North Africa. When looking into the African me story, it is possible to draw important clues into getting behind what was going on and how the Africans had started to develop by placing together various aspects of our research. For instance, it is an accepted fact that instances of human migration are driven by significant change, whether that be due to natural disasters such as floods, famines or droughts, some form of oppressive system including agitation from alien bandits or dangerous animals, and or even wars. The system of seasonal migration by the North African nomads may have been influenced to varying extents by all of these factors. Another key indicator that can be quite revealing are the lifestyle practices and industries that emerge within a given society, shedding some light on the kinds of deification that are starting to take place, such as what we've already discussed in the previous section in relation to the Apis deity, who opens up their awareness of the many constellations and the monthly cycles of the moon. Some of the indicators may actually be a throwback to things that stand within our Black, and in my case, Afro-Caribbean culture that we don't even fully understand or appreciate. Take a look at this. It's an image of an ancient rock art depiction from South Algeria, showing a scene from an annual migratory procession. What I see when I look at it is a spirit of carnival, almost literally jumping out at you. The female to the left of the giraffe is unmistakably singing and dancing excitedly, both in praise and in joy. Others are holding what looks like either drums or decorative shields or spears or knives. Even the clumsy grace of the long-necked companion on the journey still has its place in various formats as part of the modern-day annual carnival procession. Despite the popularity that existed for the nomadic lifestyle across North Africa, there were still those in various locations on the fringes of the Sahara region who maintained a more settled lifestyle and were continuing to make developments in support of that, and possibly even in opposition to the nomadism even. But things would soon start to change, and not by human choice or actions. So if you look at this map of Africa, as you can see, it's titled Desiccation with a few question marks around the 8th millennium. Because like I've said, during the 8th millennium BCE, it's possible that a significant drying incident occurred in the southern Sahara region as part of what would become a major climate event. So whatever that event actually was, it drove nomadic herders in that area all the way south, as you can see as indicated on the arrow on the map. It's driven all the way south into modern day territory of Central African Republic, where they quickly settled into a more sedentary lifestyle, taking up farming and fishing practices. Some modern scientists would partition blame for the climate change event that would occur onto the nomadic lifestyles that had existed in the region, that had the effect of supporting overgrazing and overprotecting the cattle. The nomadic lifestyle and its associated ritual practices may also have been viewed for similar reasons, with a certain level of contention by some of the more settled communities of Africans on the edges of the Sahara region. And as you can see here, we have a picture of the Sphinx. If we look at the image of the Great Sphinx of Giza, which is believed by some scholars to have been first constructed between 10,000 and 5,000 BC. The story it tells us is that while the nomads were following the Apis bull, the settled farmers and fishers were sitting quietly, observing like humble lions. So, whatever contributing effect the nomadic lifestyle may have had to climate change at that time, it is also a fact that over 300,000 plus years that humans had been around on the planet, there has also been several periods of desiccation in the Sahara region. In general terms, if not more specifically, this has occurred adjacent to the severe glacial periods that would see Europe covered under a virtual permanent sheet of ice. So it would seem that this climate change event that happened was just a part of the natural cycle that the Earth goes through over a long period of time, meaning that since we represent no more than a tiny grain when put up against a great oneness which we call the universe, human beings had to learn to adapt if they were to survive. The period of desiccation really starts to set in during the 5th millennium BCE on the northwest and southeast edges of the Sahara region, as is indicated in this image. So if we look at the map, we can see the arrows indicating the kind of movements, the migrations that were taking place at this time during the 5th millennium BCE. To the northwest in Morocco, you start to see evidence that the nomads are starting to follow more settled farming practices, along with the manufacture of items of pottery, a practice that had already been developed by the more settled communities further south towards the Senegal River. In the southeast of the Sahara region, nomadic herders had started to migrate into modern-day Sudan, also beginning to take on more settled, or at least semi-nomadic lifestyles. In our next map, for the 4th millennium BC, we can see the arrows indicating the kinds of movement that are starting to happen at this period of time. So you see that what's happening is the effect of desiccation has spread further inland towards the center. So you start to see more settled farming practices on the north coast region of Tunisia. You see the arrow pointing up to the north coast. That's where Tunisia is more or less located. And the effects of severe warming in the Niger region of the Sahara, driving the nomads west into the territory of modern-day Mali. Okay. It is during this period that the first dynasty of pharaohs in ancient Egypt is established, and the purchasing of gold from Sudan will begin to take place. There are several interesting markers to take notice of when you look at the changes that are starting to take place. So one is a return to a more settled lifestyle, which is in a sense they are remembering the ancestors before them. Number two, agricultural farming for food and medicine, recognizing gifts from the goddess or the Great Mother. And three, use of gold and other metals, which is kind of an indication of the sharpened teeth of merciless correction. All of these innovations can be seen through systems of deification arising out of the ancient Egyptian culture. So if we look at the images that I've got here, you see, first of all, we have an image of Asor, also known as Osiris. So you have remembrance of the ancestors, those that have come and gone before us, through the god Asor, the symbol of the great and wise ancestor of all humans. The next image that I have here for you is one of Orset, also known as Isis, the goddess Isis, the caring and nurturing goddess, great mother figure, who was also the wife of Asor. Goddess Orset, bringing happiness when we are sad, making us strong even when we are weak, and many other virtues that come with her blessings. The third image I bring to you is image of Set, symbolizing an ability to cultivate a sharp, focused cutting edge when necessary in order to achieving positive outcomes, as is displayed by the god Set, who was the treacherous brother of the god Asor. This quality could probably be looked upon as being the most unforgiving and or corruptible of requirements when trying to administer over the needs and security of a large population of people living within an enclosed society, as many of these new settlements had started to become. Such societies would require some kind of civil law system by which the people would be able to live by, both peacefully and happily. In ancient Egypt, that system would come through the goddess Ma'at. So this is an image of the goddess Ma'at, and basically she was a goddess of justice and good clean living, basically. Okay. The next image I want to bring you back to these maps of the desiccation, and this one is the one for the 3rd millennium. We can see again the arrows indicating the kind of movement that was going on. So the 3rd millennium BCE would see desiccation spread even further west into Mali, driving migration along with the introduction of settled farming practices towards the south of modern day country. So you can see on the left of the map the arrow that is pointing down from the northern region of Mali, the more Sahara region, down into the south. Nomadic herders would also begin to appear in Kenya towards the east, arriving there from Sudan, possibly as a result of pressure being exerted on them because of their unwillingness to totally put aside their nomadic lifestyle. Nomadic, or at least semi-nomadic practices would also spread north along the coast into modern-day Somalia and Djibouti. In Egypt, around this time, the first pyramids were now starting to be built. In our next image of the 2nd millennium, you'd see further migration of the remaining former nomadic communities in Sudan, probably because of unrest in Kush under Egyptian rule at this time, and the migration would take them as far south as Tanzania. On the western side of the Sahara region, desiccation there had driven migration west into modern-day Mauritania, where they begin living a semi-nomadic lifestyle, gradually developing a stone-wall protected settlements. They also began intensifying their fishing and shipbuilding activity in the region, something the settled communities of Senegal further south had been practicing even before the nomadic period began. What can be noticed when observing the various migrations that were taking place during this period is that there are, at this stage, no significant territorial conflicts occurring as a result of this. Apart from that is, in the two powerful and large and influential territories of Egypt and Kush, both with massive international trade interests to protect. So desiccation would bring about a return of all, apart from the most determined of the nomads, to a more settled or sedentary way of life, or lifestyle. What they brought with them on their return to this lifestyle was a greater understanding of their immediate environment and universal surroundings, enabling them to institute in their various societies reliable systems supporting stability and security.
Yeah, I'm a rebel in the morning, rebel in the evening too. I'm a rebel. When you take a stop and look and see Crazy things in this black history, across the ocean and across the sea. Now is the time to be free. No commotion, I'm feeling the pain, I feel their emotion, the love and devotion, just like a root potion, 'cause I'm a rebel.